Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you are listening to the Makers of Minnesota podcast, where we talk to cool people doing cool things. And I am here today virtually, remotely, with Steele Smiley, and he is the founder of Crisp and Green, which is a salad concept that you go in and you can get salads made for you, or you can pick your own ingredients. And we are recording this in the time of coronavirus, where the restaurants have been closed here. I think we're going on week number 6. Steele, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you doing this, and I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, in all transparency, you and I had recorded a podcast, about 8 weeks ago, and I had a disc failure, which has only happened one other time in 3.5 years. So we had this great conversation. I was so jazzed about it. And then I went to go download it to edit it, and it was gone, which was horrible. So thank you for being back on the podcast. It's kind of funny how that all worked out, because so much of what we would have talked about then is so different now.
Yeah, no, that's unbelievable. I mean, the world has literally changed so much since the last time you and I spoke, and maybe it was one of those things that was meant to be. So we could talk now, and what we would talk about now is certainly a lot more relevant to what we would have been speaking about 8 weeks ago.
I have to say, I feel like, first of all, you strike me as an extremely positive person. You are very forward thinking. You're an entrepreneur at heart. When someone gives you a challenge, you find a way around it. In some ways, I think you are the best person to be talking to, because you're so particularly adept, in my mind, at these circumstances that we're in right now. Does this feel exhilarating to you in a weird way?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words. And, the answer is absolutely. I mean, I think that it's mixed emotions, right? I mean, you're looking at the challenges that we all face and people that we know. And I know the people in my life that I know have been infected and that have had challenges and with their family members. And, certainly even within the restaurant business, of the difficulty that it's been for other restaurateurs. And you look at it like a big family. You've got your full service, your fast casual, your drive-through, but we're all in the business of hospitality. And so it's been such a difficult time for so many. But on the flip side, I think for the entrepreneur, there is always opportunities when the chaos arrives. And, we have to execute the best way we can. While in this case, where we preserve as many jobs as we possibly can, make sure that we're doing our job to stay healthy for the people that we serve, and also being a good ambassador for the industry as a whole, and sharing those ideas with others who can benefit and improve their businesses too. So I look at it as a multifaceted answer, but I always think in times of chaos, which just definitely fits into that camp, there's definitely opportunity. And I'm positive today. I'm certainly positive.
So you have Crisp and Green, which is a franchised concept, but you also own some of the franchises here. So that's where most people would be familiar with you. How many locations do you have currently?
We have seven locations that are open in Minnesota. Certainly had plans to continue to grow, and this has we've taken a moment of pause here to make sure that we service the state of Minnesota and make sure that all of our stores are performing. But as the franchisor and owner of the brand as a whole, I'm still responsible for the performance of all the stores, regardless of whether I own them individually or whether it's a franchise store. Someone is paying me to make sure that that store performs, and they operate it. But what happens in that store ultimately still is a representation of the brand I created, and I want it to be great.
Well, and I think what's nice for you is Chris Humphreys, who's a former Timberwolves player, is your franchisor in Minnesota, and I know you guys are friends. So that might be a lucky thing right now, because you're able to kind of work together in a way that would be a little bit more personal than just if you were dealing with your franchisees, right?
Yeah, and the reality of it is that I don't have a lot of day-to-day interaction with Chris. He has a management team that operates the business for him, and they do a really, really fantastic job of keeping things going. And so it's not like we're talking every day and making adjustments in the store. We have another fantastic franchisee. His name is Blake, who is a world-class operator, and he does a really fantastic job. And so we have the adjustments that we make in our home office, and then we disseminate those ideas and tips and tricks and and methodologies to the store. So, it certainly helps to have good relationships with your franchisees, but we are also lucky right now in the sense that we have just two. So it is not, that encompasses the 7 stores versus being a more mature system. The last system I left, I think I had 796 franchisees, unique franchisees in the United States. So that would have been much more difficult to maneuver than this system there's essentially 3 of us involved. So we can make adjustments very, very quickly. And we certainly have.
Yeah. And you've been involved in the fitness business, which also has taken a massive hit in that gyms aren't able to open right now. That is one sector like that, and some personal care, like things like massage. And I don't know how that's going to come back online. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think about the fitness business every day because I spent almost 15 years of my life in it. And, having formerly, operated the largest franchisor in the world that was wellness focused, we had 6 concepts, 2,500 gyms in 25 countries. That is a monster challenge, especially when you're forced to close. And then when you reopen, you have this whole concept of how do people who are touching the same weights every single day, same cardio machines, how in the world do you keep them healthy? It is far easier to do it in the restaurant business where we take unbelievable precautions every single day and to ensure that people are healthy. In the fitness business, it would be very, very challenging for that business to move forward the same way that it was when it, before this happened. I think it will be forever changed. And the reality of it is, I think that there'll be some large amounts of contraction in that business. And I think that mom and pop operator or individual franchisee with a small number of stores could be very affected. So, it is tough. It's been a tough blow, I think, for the fitness business in general. And as we sit here and speak today in Minnesota, there's no clear answer when the gyms will ever reopen. And I know as a gym user myself, just personally, and the thousands of others that are a part of it, and you too, it's hard for us.
It is. And it's so funny because some of these businesses, like, I'll just throw out like a Planet Fitness where the equipment largely sits in a space and then you can contract for additional services, but you have an access code in 24 hours a day. You can go to your gym, and it can be a really kind of private experience, or it can be more a group setting, however you'd like to do it. And that was a great business model because it kind of ran itself, right? But now, like, just the idea of you're going to have attendance in all of these places, wiping down all this equipment 24/7. And, I'm not a big sweater, but my husband's a head sweater. And man, if he gets on like a spin bike, look out. You don't want to be within 2 feet of the guy. And I think that's pretty common.
I think you're exactly right. And you look at, and certainly in that business, Planet, very, very good, healthy system with good, healthy economics.
Sure.
The individual franchisees do very, very well, better than any other gym chain in that 24-hour space. So, they'll probably be okay. But you look at some of those other competitors in the space that have the smaller formats, maybe 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 square foot stores, they just don't have the economic unit level model to support someone cleaning all day. So how do they make it? And then, more importantly, if you have 3, 4, 5, 600 members, how many of those members are going to be happy going back into that gym, feeling like they can work out again? Or are they more likely to have a Peloton in their home or run outside or do whatever they want to do? So
right.
I think it's going to be a fundamental shift that will never be the same in the fitness business. And again, your key operators and your talented entrepreneurs will capitalize on that. You have your workout systems at home, like Tonal and Mirror, that are these built-in systems into the wall that are unbelievable. And if your users have not heard of them, they should check them out. That's so relevant today because you can get a gym level experience or group setting class inside your house. But the problem is that, they're still limited to people who have $3,000, $4,000 to spend. And so, what's that individual user going to do that goes to Planet Fitness, doesn't want to touch the equipment? They're probably going to work out at home for a while and drop their membership. So
yep.
It's going to change forever.
Well, and at the holiday time, there was the commercial of the guy that bought his girlfriend the Peloton bike, and we were all horrified.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
Now I'm like, oh, darn, I could have used that Peloton bike because that's just, I can go out and bike outside now, but in the wintertime, it's going to be grim.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, but your cost to entry, I mean, you're $2,500 for a bike, you're $25 a month or $30 a month. And so, there's a cost level that is prohibitive for
yep.
some. And so, it's your small operators that they're gonna struggle with the independent franchise that own two or three individual stores. I think it's going to forever change, and hopefully it's not the case, but I have not as bullish of a view on that as maybe some would.
So let's move to the restaurant space, which is your space
Absolutely.
now. And
Yeah.
we know that restaurant tours generally have always had a high level of cleanliness just because they're mandated, number one, and there's safeguards. Let's just talk about the day. I want you to just give me a sense of like the day that it was like a week of time where we were feeling like closing was imminent, closing was coming, closing was coming. Tell me what it felt like to be an owner of these concepts when all of a sudden they told you had to shut down.
Yeah, boy, that's a great question. I mean, I have goosebumps literally thinking about it. And I'm gonna give you a two-part answer. The first of which is the actual day. And for me, it was kind of multiple days on end. And I think, I was getting calls. We were communicating with the governor through a mutual friend, and he was calling us back, and we were understanding, okay, what's going to happen to the restaurant business? What's going to happen to, do you pay sales tax? Are we going to be forced to shut down? And so we, unlike many other brands, had a very direct communication, not only with Capitol Hill through people that I knew, but also to the governor's office directly. So we had a little bit of insight as to what would happen. But it was pandemonium. I mean, I think, every hour you'd look and the stock market would drop. I had friends calling me saying, hey, I just went to U.S. Bank. They would only limit, I could only take $1,000 out. They stopped, taking deposits out. I had people that were going to the grocery store, taking as much as they possibly could. So, no one was really prepared for it until it hit. But we had one little advantage that made all the difference in the world. In my previous career in fitness, half of my responsibility was outside the United States. And so I had become very used to watching the international news through the BBC and other outlets that were just a part of my day-to-day routine. And so, I was watching what was happening in the rest of the world, and paying attention to those things. So, for example, we were able to order all of the masks while they still were in inventory. We were able to order all of the hand sanitizers well before they were stocked out. We were able to order all the towels and the toilet, all the toilet paper and all those things that you would need to run a business. We were able to stock up on those items, and we felt like maybe we were a little bit early. And so we contacted our suppliers. We had huge inventory of these things that, now we've been able to run through, and fortunately the supply chain's caught up. So we're able to kind of continue to keep going. But, we had a little bit of foresight in the sense of this could be very, very impactful. And so we knew that the business model had to change. And, we were watching, people fell into two camps, which was, this is an unbelievable. And I always say this every day. It's like a Harvard business case, because it's like, what do? You had 50%. First of all, every full service restaurant had to close.
Yep.
You have 50% of your fast casual or fast food that chose to stay open, and 50% of those that said, hey, we're out. We don't think we can make the economics work. And then out of the 50% that stayed open, only a handful of them modified their offering to take advantage of the opportunity and serve their customers in the best way possible. And out of the ones that were open, only a few of them have an app that was even able to do delivery or order online. And so it became a small subset of a smaller subset of a smaller subset that actually had the opportunity to stay propped up during this pandemic. And we were very fortunate that we were able to not only stay open, but retain all of our employees, and also modify our business model to leverage the technology that we already had in place to continue to serve our guests, with revenue that, is very close to where the levels were before this hit. So we feel very, thank you. We feel very blessed and fortunate to be able to do that. And we know we're in the minority, and but we have the tools in place and the ingenuity during that shift to make those changes very, very rapidly. And most businesses would have, didn't. And that's, it's tough because we want everyone to be successful because we want everything to be normal, just like you do,
Right,
and,
right.
but we feel very fortunate.
You had a very, I loved your business model that you had. And what I've noticed is how quickly you've pivoted to like family size meals and take and make meals. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like that caught a lot of the restaurant industry by surprise, that was going to be something that people really wanted.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. And, and so for your listeners that don't know, we offer predominantly, prior to this, you would go through a line and you would make your salad and it would be beautiful and Instagrammable and all those things. And you could either have it delivered or you could pick it up or we had to, put a tremendous amount of money into an app and you would hit a button and it would just appear on a countertop inside of our stores. You could pick it up. The idea of providing, raw items in bulk was something that I had thought about, when this was starting. And we realized that opportunity was going to be massive, but we also understood that the families were going to buy a tremendous amount of prepackaged goods and canned goods going into this problem. So, we had to understand that, number one, to provide a meal kit, which allows you right now, you can go on our app and you can order, anything you want. You can order chicken, you can order a la carte, you can order basically just like the grocery store, or Instacart, or any of those things, except for the fact that our delivery is in 30 minutes. So it's the same experience, except the food is more fresh and it's as value priced and it can be delivered right to your door. And so for us, we had to have the technology in place, but we also had to take advantage of that pivot. And so I called everyone into an office. We held 2 meetings. We did an 8:30 call, and then we did a 2:30 afternoon meeting, and we did that 7 days a week. And we're still doing that to this day. So we pivoted completely, and we were recognized for it. Forbes picked us up as one of the first chains in the United States to offer this prepackaged meal kit. And now everyone has done something similar. Mm-hmm. And Forbes was so gracious, and I'm indebted to them forever for running a big story on Crisp and Green. But we realize everyone has since done it. But the problem is that people didn't execute necessarily all the same way, and other brands were selling toilet paper and all these weird things. And we stayed very true to very crisp, healthy, great food delivered to your door, whether you wanted it pre-made or whether you wanted the raw ingredients, maybe to make tacos at home. And so we also realized, Stephanie, one crazy thing is that, it was going to be like a 3-week lag for people to be able to order these things because we knew that it wouldn't take off right away because everyone was stocked up. So we had to have the patience to invest into this platform and let it pay off. And it certainly did.
Yeah, I would say. Is there any thought about bottling the agua frescas?
I think the shelf life on that is pretty short. So that's definitely something we've looked into, and it's not on our development timeline. But we will offer the ability at some point for someone to take a gallon of it if they want, and they can. They've got 4 or 5 or 6 days to consume it. So, look, the way I look at it is my job is very simple. I have to satisfy the guest's needs, regardless of what is thrown at me. It's my job to make sure that I'm delivering a crisp service with unbelievable hospitality and a smile and a great experience every single day. And, we take all feedback. People come in all of the time with questions. We get hundreds of direct messages a day and they say, hey, what about this? And what about this?
Yeah.
And we listen and we look at every single one of them because we would not be here without our customers. And they've been so appreciative. People are dropping off notes at, our front and down in Wayzata, there's a wall. People have taken and kind of handwritten notes from the outside of the store, and they tape them to the window saying, thanks for being open. And, thanks for wearing gloves, when you deliver, and thanks for doing all the small things that you just should do. And we just look at it as an opportunity to serve those communities. And it's truly an honor every day to be open and just give people the smile and say, hey, we got you, we got you. And I don't care if we make money on it or not. It's the right thing to do right now. And if there's one thing that this pandemic has done, is it's truly made a community when there maybe wouldn't have been one before, because we are truly all in this together.
Yeah. And you are a real person that has studied management and leadership philosophy. If you were going to give advice to other leaders of companies right now, what do you think are like the top 3 things they need to have or be doing, or what are skill sets they need to exhibit?
Great question. I mean, I think the first thing is to listen. Every sort of young entrepreneur, and I know I fit into this category. It took me a decade to learn to listen. And I had to learn the hard way. And I realized that I didn't have every answer all the time. And some of the best answers I had a meeting this morning with, a virtual meeting on FaceTime chat. We had, 5 or 6 of us on the call, which is kind of a cool platform. And, I had the youngest member of our team, she's in her young 20s, have just a tremendous idea that, you encourage everyone to share their ideas. I think the second thing is be flexible, make sure that, you have the opportunity to make those pivots when they happen. And sometimes they're life-saving for your business. And, it is definitely scary and it's outrageous at times to think about, hey, this worked before, I'm just going to stick with it. That your top level entrepreneurs, they're always modifying and changing. And I would say that the third thing is you got to work hard. I mean, and I definitely know that entrepreneurs typically fit into 2 camps: people that work every day and are on top of it, and those that work occasionally. And there is a correlation between those that put in the time and that will willing to work. I mean, we're running 7 days a week right now. I'm communicating with my team 7 days a week, and not every team is willing to do that. And I've got the best team in restaurants currently. I'm so beyond thankful for everyone that they step up to the plate and they're doing it. But you got to surround yourself with probably good people too, and that's maybe a 4th thing. It's not really about the entrepreneur. It has the success of Crisp and Green has very little to do with Steel. It truly is the ability for others to play their role, just like a great basketball team would, or a great football team, or whatever your analogy is. It's not about one person. It's about everyone together, and how sort of you do that in harmony. And if you can do it and capture it, you can win. If you don't, it's not. You're not going to win.
You are a person that looks at opportunity all the time. And I imagine as an entrepreneur in your heart that you're looking at some of the burgeoning opportunities that are going to come out of this, aren't you?
I am, and I'm fortunate enough that I get the phone calls. So, just Sunday night, I had somebody call me, and another top entrepreneur, maybe top 2 or 3 entrepreneur that we all know in Minnesota, call me and say, "Hey, Steele, what are you doing? Tell me, let's talk about this." And so I think you're seeing a lot of collaboration with people. And I know I love a good partnership. And I've been very blessed at Crisp and Green to have great partners, that I've worked with, Ryan and Lily, who I started this business with. And, but that's really what it's all about. And I think good collaboration, and there's going to be opportunities. I think the most alarming part of this one, though, however, is that, you got to stay focused on your mothership, because, so much is changing so quickly that, if you pivot to do something different, you don't want the first ball to drop. And so I think there's a little bit of more sensitivity and tentativity, if that's a word even, to make sure that you're going to choose something that works. Because I mean, look, how many, you see a lot of the same entrepreneurs going after the same. We all know we need, this idea to be protective of ourselves, and there's going to be those opportunities around just the more obvious things, but it's the non-obvious things where there may be the most opportunity.
I think it's interesting, too, that you mentioned the time and the speed with which things are moving. That first couple of weeks, it was so exhausting. Just, being someone who's in that restaurant space, you had half of it was just the sheer anxiety of people losing their livelihoods and trying to figure out how to save their business. And then just the speed of which things were moving, not only like the closing, but setting up your online ordering system and what are you going to offer? And you mentioned in the beginning, everybody transferred like their entire menu, which was dumb. I had one client that had frozen drinks. I was like, these aren't going to travel very well. Like you really needed to pare down, like, okay, what are our fan favorites? What can we execute? And let's not give people a horrible experience just because we're trying to stay open. Like, it's evolved, and I think things are better. But in the beginning, it was a hairy days, boy.
Oh, it definitely was. And most of those restaurants, that pivoted early, probably, at least some that I'm aware of, didn't end up staying open. I mean, it wasn't profitable for them
Yep.
to stay open and deliver, 5 or 15 meals a night for dinner. It just didn't work. And so you've now seen many of those close, and, God willing, they all reopen. I mean, we thrive, our community thrives on diversity, within the restaurant sector, and everyone should have the opportunity to continue to stay in business. But the reality of it probably won't be the same, and that's going to be tough. But in those early moments, it was nothing short of chaos. And I mean, I didn't want to go to bed at night because I would miss something. And I would get up early in the morning, and you had your I mean, my phone was ringing, late into the night and
Right.
early in the morning, with, hey, who do I know on Capitol Hill? Who can I get an answer from? What do we think is going to happen? What's Trump going to do? What's the stimulus going to look like? What programs are going to come out? Be in first in line here. Make sure you do this here. I mean, I was hitting my entire network, and thankfully it worked. But, I wish there was also an opportunity for some of the entrepreneurs that maybe are listening, or other people that didn't have that level of connectivity, that we could have shared some of this information with other people to help them too, because we were able to get information faster because we have very blessed to have a good network, whereas a lot of people maybe didn't have that advantage. And so the information, a lot of it was just straight up incorrect. I mean, I know a lot of the things we read early came out one day, you should do this, or apply for this, or call this person, or this is what's going to happen. And then the next day, it completely changed. There was a moment where we got a phone call from someone who is a number 2 of the National Guard in Minnesota that said, we've just mobilized our entire group. I want you to know we're going to be bringing in people, and they're going to shut the borders off, which means our supply chain is over. And I mean, that never even happened.
Right.
So, and I think what we later found out was that, on Capitol Hill, that was what was going to happen, and someone changed their mind, and it didn't happen. And so our intel was reliable, but there was so much changing so fast that, 1 hour you hear it and you say, okay, supply chain's done. We're not going to get trucks. We can't get food. It's over. And then the next minute is, well, no, we're going to just, pivot. So my goodness. I mean, it's been fascinating. It's been team building. It's been scary, exhilarating, crazy, all in, 30 days, 30 days.
When you talk about some of the loan programs and the payment protection programs, I imagine you applied for some of those like many people did. Did you get funding, and were you angry when a lot of the funding went to people like Shake Shack or Ruth Chris?
We're in a different position than a lot of the brands that needed the funding. I'll comment, I think, on the bigger brands that got it, because I think that it is always alarming. When you've got the opportunity to sell your own paper or your own stock to raise capital, that's problematic that you're taking away. And I know I've read multiple statistics of who applied and who got money and who didn't get money. But I know that it was a very small minority of, I think, the people that needed it actually got it. And that's a big problem. I mean, we have big thinkers in this country. We have an enormous lack of entrepreneurs to figure out how to get, I mean, just the way the stimulus was put in place. I mean, it's hardly helpful to a lot of the brands that needed it. For example, you're required to spend it. But the problem is that we have no mandated opening date for most of the brands that would need it. So, basically it's thrown out, and then there's no, so it was late. It didn't go to the right people. And as of this morning, I mean, I think $350 billion are supposed to be earmarked again. But they're saying it's going to go out in 2 or 3 days. You had your big banks like US Bank and Wells Fargo who, turned away everybody, or told people they would get it, but they didn't get it. You had super small banks that came and stepped up big. So it was a total disaster. And it was well intended. It just didn't work the way that it was supposed to. And so, we were very fortunate that our revenue was able to stay, we stayed open, and we've stayed open every day since it was announced, and we're still delivering, and, our business is largely restored. But the reality of it is that we know that that's not the case for everybody else. And so, our hope is that they get what they need to be successful, and, the government does the right thing.
Yeah, I kind of feel
this. It helps people.
I feel the same way. Like, I don't want to demonize Ruth Chris, Shake Shack, or any other businesses for being on it, having a good relationship with their bank, and applying for the loans that they thought they were entitled to get. Where, I'm not angry about them applying. I'm not angry that they did that. They're trying to take care of their business and their people too. It just, I think, was so quickly executed, and small businesses weren't, maybe they should have been identified of what is a small business, because it is a little galling when, you see that Ruth Chris bought back $5 billion of their, or $5 million of their own stock during the last tax break. But yet, the restaurant down the corner, the diner that employs, 32 people, and it's a mom and pop shop, isn't able to get anything. So it was a little ham-handed. I hope it'll get sorted out and there'll be more funds for people. At the end of the day, this is 20% unemployment in the state of Minnesota, which we have not seen since the Great Depression. It will be very interesting to see. And just the class of restaurant workers, restaurant work has always either been a career, or B, it's been an opportunity to fill in while you're going to school, or maybe you're a single mom and you need some extra cash. All of the gig economy and all of the restaurant jobs, it's so stunning to me how many people are unemployed.
Yeah, and I'll comment on one thing, and then I'll get to that. So to Danny's credit, CEO of Shake Shack, I mean, he ended up giving back his $10 million.
I saw that.
And they did return it, which I think was the right thing to do. And I think a lot of these big businesses were under this impression that everyone was going to get it, right? I mean, I don't think
I think they did too. Yeah.
Right. And so some of them, I think Danny Meyer's done a nice job with that and did return it. And he's certainly been a good ambassador for the business. And I've appreciated what he's done. But, here's the challenge. And this is what I tell my team every day. And I'll tell them, again, here in an hour when I'm having my second team meeting of the day. But, we're at roughly 20% unemployment. You've got a stock market that's largely rebounded and has performed relatively well, coming back. But there's an inverted sense of optimism, because every CEO that I talk to, and I'm talking at this point, I've made a goal of mine to talk to 2 or 3 a day. Whether you've got 40,000 employees, talked to a couple of days ago to, I talked to someone earlier this morning, maybe had 300-400. I think he's got 300-400 employees.
Mm-hmm.
Your CEOs are not optimistic to bring back a lot of the workers. Now, we're restored. We have all of our workers back.
Mm-hmm.
But for the businesses that are shut, like, for example, the gym business or the fitness industry, how are you going to feel about, bringing everybody back, knowing that your revenue may never match pre-COVID era or pre-COVID numbers? And so, you have this idea that this unemployment is going to spike, and then once economy opens back up, it's going to get better. I think your CEOs are thinking a little bit more strategically, in the sense of, look, I don't want to bring somebody back because I don't know whether I'm going to have the revenue to support them. And the worst thing to do is to bring them back, and then 3 months later you lay them off again. Then you're holding that person away from an opportunity that they would have doing something different. So, it is an interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see it, but I believe we're going to end up with a very large unemployment rate for quite some time as this thing rebounds. And until there is some type of a cure or opportunity where we know we're good, even this antibody test, there's so much ambiguity over whether the test is accurate or not.
Absolutely.
Or whether you can retransmit. Until we have that answer, your CEOs, I'm sorry, they're not going to be bullish about bringing their teammates back, because they don't, their job is to protect their mothership and to protect their shareholders and make sure that the business stays alive. And so, I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a high unemployment rate, and the federal government will continue to extend benefits to people, and this may be a longer recovery than we ever envisioned. And it's that mom and pop operator, whether you're in restaurants, whether you're in retail, any consumer facing business, that mom and pop operator is, that is what worries me the most. And I wish I could sit with all of them and have strategic conversations. And, help look at each individual business and transform and figure out how we stay alive together. But I think there needs to be more together conversation of how do we figure this thing out versus like we're all in it for ourselves. I mean,
right.
I wish there was more of this conversation where we could get the people on the phone, because we're lucky again that with our network we can get answers to all these things and talk to the top CEOs and Congress people and these types of things. But how does your Main Street operator in Anoka, who does he call when he needs help? And his bank turned his loan down. He's got 30 employees maybe in his business. Where does he go?
Right now, the answer is nowhere. He goes and pours himself a whiskey and tries to figure out what's next.
Yeah, and my heart breaks for that. And that's I think the $1 million question or $1 trillion question is, what do we do with your Main Street businesses and where do they go?
And how much do we value them as part of our economy and as part of our livelihood, right? You walk down Grand Avenue, and if you don't have restaurants or independent retail on that street, it's pretty grim. There's nothing on that street. So
you're exactly right. And then the other side of that is you lose your tax base. I mean, for those of us that have operated on Grand Avenue, I've had 2 or 3 stores on Grand Avenue over my career. I mean, it's the highest tax base in the state of Minnesota. So there's no business in there. How does the state get revenue? And can the landowners or building owners afford to keep the businesses without tenants? So it's a cascade effect that's going to be an academic question, but also a real life question of, hey, these are real people. People are struggling. And, this is a time for collaboration and partnership and being humble with how you're approaching these problems and helping other people versus, hey, I got this figured out. Good luck to you. There needs to be a lot more teamwork with businesses, and it is going to come. That happens.
It's going to come from the landlord on down, right? It's going to be the bank. It's going to be the landlord. It's going to be your suppliers. It's going to be your delivery drivers. It's going to take all hands on deck to be able to keep an infrastructure moving that basically just has stopped for 5 weeks. So I'm really glad that we got an opportunity to talk today. In hindsight, I think this worked out perfect because you're a very positive person. One thing that we talked about last time that I just want to touch on before I let you go is you are very interested in wellness. You are a runner. You are someone that does yoga. In this time of coronavirus, how are you staying mentally and physically healthy within yourself?
Great question. And I exercise twice a day pre-COVID era, and I still do it today. So I run every morning. I don't care whether it's 90 degrees or negative 100. That day we had this past winter, it was negative 30 degrees. I was out there in a full face mask, and I make it work no matter what. So I do that. And then the second part of the day, later in the day, more of an early evening, I do another, light set of cardio and lift weights or do yoga or something. So it's not as vigorous as it once was, where I could go to the gym or go to a class or something like that. But I do get it in, and it does make me feel better. And I've found that second workout later in the day gets me pepped back up to be able to have the energy to stay up later, watch the news, look, get a glimpse into what's happening internationally, which starts to break at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then you're ready at, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to start your day again. So I think making sure people exercise is very, very important. But I'll say it is also alarming to see how many people are out so close to each other on all these lakes too. So, it's still maintain your social distancing, make sure that you're healthy, and you're taking care of yourself, but you got to stay with your fitness. Your fitness will help you recover. And I believe that 20 years ago, and I still believe that.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Steele. I appreciate you talking with me
Thank
today.
You.
And good luck as we continue on through the coronavirus of 2020.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.